Razork in Italy. That was beautiful. A sign of confidence. That's a story you want to see. You know what I mean? You know how many game 5s in Europe, at Worlds, anywhere, where I've seen where just like the first 10 minutes are like scared boy power hour?
I think that in the LEC, the top 3 of LEC should be like Omega locked and that no one should be allowed to enter. We're the bodyguard securing the door.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the EUphoria podcast. Sorry we missed you guys last week and sorry to upset that we didn't get to have him on the show. We offered him the chance this week, but he declined because he wanted to focus on Casey and what was coming up. However, as always, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud.
Yeah, this week we kind of said goodbye to 4 of our teams and then had Adam pop onto the show for a little bit just to chat about kind of what's happening in BDS and where their head is at before we give a nice little roundout of the weekend ahead, which is set to be an absolute banger of a series.
Look, complete and total banger. Top 4 is crazy. KC are incredibly close to making the miracle run happen. And also, Fnatic and G2 just played a 5-game series that was an incredible joy to cast. So without further ado, let's get into this very weird, very sleep-deprived episode of the EUphoria podcast. And here we are for a very weird EUphoria episode, because this is the beginning of this episode. It's also the last part we're recording, and it is currently about to be midnight on Tuesday.
My voice is dunzo.
Rob cast 16 games this weekend.
It's great.
We both got over being sick, showed up, and started casting. So this has been a very weird week. Mm-hmm. But as we mentioned at the top of the day, like we're gonna jump into an Adam interview in a little bit here. That's gonna be fantastic. And we have gone from, since we last spoke, because we missed last episode, 8 teams down to 4. Of course, this week we eliminated GX and Team Heretics, which crazy for some parts. Wait, do any?
We got GX, we got Heretics, we got SK who dropped, and MDK, right?
Wait, who did we eliminate this week? Rob, my brain is bad.
Yeah, I don't know.
We eliminated. We went from 8 to 4 this week. We did all 4 this week.
Yeah,
because we just played the first thing last week. Guys,
GX, Heretics, SK, MDK.
Warning in advance. I was going to tell you at the start of this episode, which is now the part we're recording last, which is going to be a theme throughout this episode. I'm going to say weird stuff like that. But we did really good for the last 50 minutes of this episode. This first 10 minutes you're listening to right now
is when the caffeine is wearing off.
The caffeine is gone. I got 3 hours of sleep last night. Rob cast a million games. So if it gets weird here, what I need you to understand is that the meat and potatoes of this particular episode is good. Is good. So this week, we played a lot of elimination games in a very specific order that is currently eluding me. But basically, we eliminated a bunch of teams this week, right? We started
MDK,
off
KC.
Started off with our first one, Team Heretics versus GX, where GX were able to win. MDK KC, incredibly decisive for KC, which continued to be the trend this weekend. Well, not incredibly decisive. But they did also manage to beat SK, which is, I think, the biggest surprise this weekend. This was an incredible story for KC, but obviously hearts out to Team Heretics, who we will not see again this year. MDK, while they completely bombed, played a really, truly bad series. It was really sad to watch. Fortunately, because of their winter performance, have earned enough season points that we will see them in season finals. So we're not going to lament too much there. But really, shout out to KC for this incredible run now that they've made top 4. And to a certain degree, shout out to GX, because I kind of thought they were going to win today. I kind of was pretty convinced they were going to win today, actually.
Yeah, it got close. I think it is heartbreaking for Giant X because it felt like the building pieces are there. Yeah. And I really hope we do get to see this team kind of like, if they don't get into season finals, depends on Carmine Corp finish top 3.
We've locked 5 out of our 6 teams for season finals. You can check that out. Shout out to LOL Fandom Wiki for keeping us up to date. You guys check it out there. But the only spot remaining is if KC make top 3, they get it. If they don't, GX get it.
Yeah. So, but either way, like I want to see this team stay together because it does feel like it's just a case of cleaning up mid-game points, like figuring out how they want to try and approach team fights a little bit better because they had this. And then there was like one arrow that snuck its way past to like get onto Jackie's. There was like one point where someone else gets caught out. It's just, it feels like they're so close to being a really, really good team. Especially when you're looking at like rookie talent for Jackie's and stuff. Like this guy's only going to get better. I think this is a roster that, given, another 6 months next year even, could suddenly become one of our top 4 teams.
I agree. I do wish they would stop flipping Barons. But as Odo highlighted today when I kept saying, why do they keep doing this? He did mention, like he said, look, the setup is good, right? It's a good risk. And most of the time what's happening is that they probably don't intend to finish it. It's just that the enemy team comes so late that they do manage to finish it. But I think the theme for this weekend was surprising performances, good and bad. And the other thing was messy games, close games, because we saw a lot of teams we didn't expect a lot from, or at least I didn't expect a lot from. Again, KC, big surprise. We talk more about it later.
Just on the KC thing, KC MDK thing real quick, I do want to give a shout out to EUphoria, because holy, that man tried his hardest to carry. And like his AP jungler performance was insane. The fact that literally KC went in and went no to all AP junglers in the draft, like they knew EUphoria was the problem. So shout out to EUphoria. That was a heroic performance, and I am sad that we end up losing him right as it feels like this meta could be where we get to see more of his incredible performances. But yeah, it just unfortunately just wasn't enough. So I wanted to give a quick hit to him. I thought he was really, really good.
And I hope for his sake and for most teams' sakes, the season finals doesn't change too much in terms of patch, because they have a little bit of time right between end of split and season finals. But I hope it's not like a crazy rework. I also hope the same is true for Worlds, because the worst thing in the world is when people qualify to Worlds on one patch and then they rework the game.
Yeah.
Always works out well for some teams, but I'd like it to work out well for our teams this year, please. Balanced team. Yeah, but I think you're right. I think EUphoria had a heroic performance. I think I'm hoping that in season finals as well we can see more from Mirwin. I think we're in this. The tricky thing about Mirwin, I don't want to undersell him, because I think there are some people that are overcritical. But the reality is they very heavily prioritize his niche picks, his unique picks. You can call them cheese picks if you want. And a lot of times they require a certain spot in draft. We usually always win lane, because it's almost always a counter pick. And then they almost always are going to struggle, unless he's incredibly dominant, to provide more in the mid to late game, which is rough, because I still feel like that is the area that Mad Lions core are weakest, right? And if it's like, I love that you had a 1.5k goal lead on Nico top. That was sick. You were smashing. Problem is, team's already a little shaky in mid game. You know, sometimes maybe Malphite, maybe Ornn. You know what I mean? Like maybe we just I would like to also see the normal stuff. I don't doubt that he can play it. He hasn't been as good on it, but I don't doubt that he can have good performances on it. I just think that he has the inverse problem of every other top laner around the middle of the pack in our league, which is most of them cannot play any of the unique stuff.
It's the Antonio is on this side.
So the Antonio's on this side just playing tanks and Rumble, and he's over here like, I will never play tank or Rumble ever in my life, right? Like there are two wolves inside you. There are two Spanish top lane wolves inside of you. It's like they split the soul of one truly great top laner between two players.
Yeah.
They kept a lot of charisma for both people, though, for splitting the soul, though. I will say, both very charismatic guys. But yeah, I mean, it's a very weird circumstance. And it's not like it's just Mirwin. I think Mirwin's the one who stands out to me. But it was a rough series overall and a rough playoffs overall for MDK, right? Alvaro, who I think is normally a big standout, had a relatively rough series. And so it was a bit messy. Team Heretics, the other thing, I didn't give them as much time of day. And I think, again, it's just tragic to watch a lot of these teams that, like, again, have these ceilings, not be able to hit them. I don't mind. Someone always has to lose, right? But I think your hope for any team as a pundit of this league, or as someone who maybe isn't a fan of one of these teams, just a fan of League of Legends, is that like you get to go out playing a really good game of League of Legends.
I think I want to see a team go out playing their game, but it felt like Heretics never found what their game was.
Yeah,
I think that was the kind of saddest part, is that you had so many of these pieces. It was actually really funny because Perks was backstage with us, and at one point he just said nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and I felt like that was kind of like what it was for me with Heretics, where it was the nostalgia of this was so many pieces of what were great rosters in the past, or even just great pieces individually, and you expected them to kind of come together and that magic spark to just ignite again, but it just never really worked out. They didn't really know how they wanted to play around and who they wanted to play around. They end up trying to like set up Wonder essentially to try and be a carry, but that wasn't really working out either. So I think it was just too late for them to really figure out how they wanted to approach the game. And it suddenly became, we need to just slap a band-aid on this and hope that it can get us to somewhere. And unfortunately, it just wasn't quite enough.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, right, we like 4 teams dropped out. We will see MDK again in season finals. Team Heretics gone. SK in, luckily, via points. And then the question is KC or GX, and GX, their fate is not in their own hands. So we'll see if they're going to join us again for season finals. And KC will at least get to see them next weekend. We'll see if we get to see them in season finals as well. If they beat BDS, we'll get to see them there. And we'll talk more about BDS and KC later on in the show. I want to talk briefly about Fnatic and G2. Not as much stakes.
Yeah.
Incredible series.
Bagger.
Incredible series. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of feeling shaky. You know, I'd been sick. I hadn't left my house in a lot of time. I was really over caffeinated for that series. But that series delivered. That was a joyous series to cast.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I'm always feel very privileged to do this job. That was an honor to cast that series. That series was sick. That series delivered. You know what I mean? That was a series where you really got to feel like the joy of League of Legends. And there are moments in every series where you get to feel that. But across that entire series, I just had a really good time.
I think it was also the fact Fnatic won. I think if it gotten that close and then it was just,
honestly,
G2 take it again.
Honestly, you're probably right.
Yeah.
If we came to 5 games and in game 5 G2 just stomped, I'd be like, why'd you keep us here for this one, bro? Rob already cast 6. Rob could have cast 2 less games this weekend, G2. You're right. I think there's something, and like, I don't want to discredit G2 because the problem with being the top dog is when people start expecting you to win. I don't want to discredit their wins because they're still fighting every weekend to get the wins that they get.
I don't think it's discrediting G2. It's more, I want to see the LEC rise to the level of G2. And it feels that's what's happening with Fnatic, right?
Yep.
And I think that was the best part. It was like, look, there were some individual, like there were some underperformances, don't get me wrong, but at a whole, it wasn't like G2 just imploded and Fnatic were like, well, we're just going to be a cake stomp. It was a hard fought fight. It was people had to play their macro well, play their lanes well, playing team fights well, outplay individually to find these moments. And I think that was the sickest part. And even just how many like mind games and movements and everything that went into it. And like, even I think Razork, shout out to him, like we talked later about it, but that man, that was a performance and a half. It was absolutely insane to see how well he performed in that series.
If you missed this series, man, you messed up. So just go back and watch it. Just stop the podcast, go back and watch it. Even just watch the highlights. You know, watch the drafts, watch the highlights. Whatever. I'm not going to judge you. Everybody's busy. Not everyone has time to watch 5 games. But now continuing, assuming that those people have panned away. Game 5, and I'll say it again later in the podcast, and I'll say it again at every opportunity. B1 Renekton. Damn. Okay. That's the worst first pick I've seen ever. Like, who do you think you are? Like, Renekton looked like shit in this entire series. Looked mediocre as hell across most of the series. Some good moments, sure, but like, oh my god. And I was like, what the hell? What is this thing? Nidalee. Nidalee. European team Nidalee. Razork Nidalee.
It was beautiful.
That was beautiful. A sign of confidence. That's a story you want to see. You know what I mean?
It was the first gank, the very first one topside, where he skims the spear past the minion. I was like, oh shit. It's like, Razork's going to do it.
Yeah.
And it was it was so sick.
All the no-hands Nidalee players were mad when they made that skill hitbox smaller. Yeah. But that's the advantage, baby. Is now you can thread the needle. And like, I don't want to be overly sentimental because I'm already overly sentimental because I like moments like this. You know, I'm a sucker for a good story. Sometimes too much. But when Oscar's just like, screw it, flash W, Nidalee spear, and the timing's just good, I'm like, you know how many game 5s in Europe at Worlds, anywhere, where I've seen where just like the first 10 minutes are like scared boy power hour, like so many, because it's so much pressure.
Yep.
And they have the luxury, right? It's double limb. They know they can lose. But I mean, I know for a fact, 90% of a fact, because this is not a fact, I'm making this up. A night share, Fnatic coach is sitting backstage like, I am going to get roasted to it. I will be the martyr for this draft. They will come for me. And they will take if this doesn't work, this Renekton Nidalee. Like, the hindsight analysis will be 2020 and it will be right that this was a terrible choice. And the second you see that gank, you're like,
I do love the idea that he's actually just backstage, not watching the first 2 minutes. He's just writing excuses.
Pre-composing
no, that doesn't work.
Yeah, he's writing like, I regret to inform you that, in fact, during the draft, there were some decisions made, and I'm going to take this burden as a coach to learn. And the Green is already writing the PR statement. He's sending it off to people.
Up after that first guy. He's like, let's go.
Middle fingers in the air. Let's go. And then they close it out, too. And that's the other big thing, right? You have to keep playing good to close out with a Nidalee. And I think the meta right now and the way like tower plates, et cetera, work, I think it's easier these years than it was in and with Grubs, everything, it's like definitely easier than it was in past years. Like I think 2022 was the last time Italy was really popular on such a global scale that like LEC had to pick it up. But it's still a very hard thing to do.
But it's even like Eastern teams. It is not just a thing that teams are able to play. It is a very, very difficult
Like-
pick. And there's been a lot of like, you'll hear people talk about it. You're not Canyon, bro. Don't pick it up.
we talked about this with Nightshare.
Yeah.
When Nightshare was on the podcast, he's like, no, this is a Canyon. We all agreed this is a Canyon-only champion. And then the people who watch LPL came in and said like one or two other junglers. And I was like, I didn't watch enough to give, but I'll give you credit. And then that was it. And then Isma kind of played it once for like, all right, it was a good game from Isma, maybe. And then game 5 against G2, though, is a different beast. So credit to Razork. Yeah. This series, again, one of the most exciting series. Don't want to keep Adam waiting, even though he's already done and gone. Time, a crazy concept.
Well played.
So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in. We have a nice conversation with Adam. 25 minutes. He was kind enough to share time with us in this very hectic, very busy day before going away to review. Diligent man. Wanted to focus on improving for the series.
Which is insane.
Yeah, like midnight. So we're going to head into that. So enjoy the rest of the episode. Catch you on the other side when I pick up and we start talking to Adam. Welcome, Adam, to the podcast. As I noted earlier in the show, this is at the end of the Tuesday show day.
Yeah.
Just like 3 hours ago now, you managed to take down Giant X. It was a very weird series. You said it in your interview, and for people who missed it, I would love to just ask you the same question again. Talk me through today's series from your perspective. Like, what was going on with you guys today?
And probably like this is a special case where sometimes even words cannot describe what happened. You know? Like basically, it's like it happened for a reason, but actually you just cannot know why. I mean, we're just disconnected. Actually, it's like it's different than best of ones when we're like actually stomping everyone, and then you come into best of threes and it's like maybe over too confidence.
Yeah.
Maybe be too cocky. I don't know. Like we thought we would like kind of shit stomp everyone.
Yeah.
But the first best of 3 against Mad, like everything is already so weird. By the way, like we win games we're not supposed to be just because like we're a way better team than Mad at this point. It's like even if we play at like 30 or 40%, we still manage to beat Mad, right? Then against G2 we get reality checked.
Yeah.
And it's like I thought that maybe. Because G2 reminds us that we still have a lot to work on still. And, like now against Giant X, we thought that we would just shitstorm them, like as it should be. But
then do you find yourself like rethinking everything in game, kind of going like, wait, is this the correct call? Because this hasn't really happened before.
I mean, because probably the mindset we are going into like this series is like, we need to shitstorm them. We need to be 10k goal at 20 minutes. It's like this series cannot be like contested, etc. But I mean, first game was not clean already. Then second game, I think we should win and we throw it. And usually when we're in a good spot, we almost never throw games in BDS.
Yeah.
It's like when we're ahead, we almost never give our advantage. And when we're like behind, we're actually so good at comebacking. And we showed it against Mad, even here today against Giant X. But I don't think that comebacking against GX was the goal of today. The goal was to win, obviously, but we wanted like to show a way better face, especially for confidence and momentum, right? For best of 5. But we didn't make it. So we didn't manage to get this confidence. So we'll review this.
Yeah.
And what does that kind of like breakdown look like for you guys? Is this like way more conversation about what you should be trying to do in a moment in game? Or is it some people aren't speaking as much as they used to? Or is it just like straight up it feels like we're all on a different page when we get into a team fight, and what used to be just we're in one brain and natural and going with the flow is just all messy now?
I mean, in our team, I don't think there has like ever been like a one brain.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I mean, since the beginning of this year, I do believe that we're like always on the same page. And I have the feeling that it's the first time that I think that we are that disconnected as a team. It's like everyone knows how to play the game, but everyone doesn't manage to connect around the things we actually want to do. I do think that everyone knows what's the best to do inside the game in terms of action, macro movement, micro, etc. Like we're all good individuals.
Yeah.
We know how to move in the map. We don't really have issues about that, but it's more when like the more difficult stuff happen, like set up objective and it's like where to fight. If we fight in this spot, how do we actually want to fight? Like who's engaging? Do we siege? Do we want to dive them? Like all those like topics that are like not really tackable actually, like in review, because these are topics that you just cannot like predict, you know, because everything
Yeah.
is like so random in a game. Like you cannot ever predict, like the drafts are never the same. So it's like only up to your experience and how everyone perceive the play in the future. And I do believe that we're not on the same page lately.
Do you think part of that is because of the meta shift? Because you're kind of seeing different champions and some that probably you haven't had much experience on. So then it becomes a case of I'm not certain on what my champion is capable of in this situation. Or do you feel like it is just the team as a whole is just not gelling?
I mean, I think that could be a factor because the more picks you're able to play in the meta, and especially during best of ones, like we're almost like the first team in EU to always like pick the AP jungle. Like we've always like making it work like in a consistent way. But then, you know, even in scrims, like we're smashing everyone. You know, like you come up into best of threes and you're like, but actually everything is working. You know, like we never had like a single issue on any champ. Like every time we've been like practicing champion in scrims, it was even going well, even when we were first timing them. So it's like, you know, you're going full confidence in best of threes, but then it like doesn't show. I don't know, like for some reason it doesn't show, and maybe we think that we actually lost our identity in BDS, but I'm not even sure because like we actually know what works the best for us, and even if we have them, it's like still hard to see in game. So I mean, I'm not quite sure, but after the win against GX, we had a discussion with like the coaches, etc., and we had like some strong conclusions. And I hope that because tomorrow we have like a day off, etc., so we'll come back on Thursday. We'll have one scrim, and then the next day is gonna be best of 5 against KC, and hopefully in like those 2 days period, even 3 days before the next best of, we can fix everything, right? And wake up, I guess.
Yeah. How do you normally handle a game like this? Because it is ultimately a win, but when it feels, you know, messy, when you don't feel like you're able to show your best, how does that affect you, you know, like personally? Is that something that you take to heart? Does it make you more excited? Does it make you more focused? Does it make you distracted? Like, how do you normally handle kind of these weird wins where it doesn't feel like you've shown your best on stage?
I mean, I would say it's like a mix of different feelings. For example, like a feeling of being scared because we want to win the split and we actually believe it strongly. We actually want to win and we actually really believe that we can beat everyone if we play up to our standards. And the fact that we managed to show like such bad performance in a way, or actually performance that are not up to our standards again, then of course I'm scared because like why cannot we perform as we should? And also like a focus because I'm like, I need to do more for my teammates and for myself as well. So I need to keep like the focus high, and of course when I will get home, I will try to review everything I could do better naturally. And yeah, it's like scared and hopeful and not hopeful at the same time. It's like you have hope, but you don't know.
Yeah.
But you rather have hope.
Do you thrive under pressure? Like, for you and for the team, do you guys thrive under this kind of pressure? Because I think the thing that's always interesting is some teams really need the like fire under them. They need that kind of pressure. And I think that you guys are already locked for season finals. So while summer is super important, there are some players I know that like if they're locked for worlds or if they're locked for like the next stage of the tournament, that instantly takes that pressure off of them and it really affects the way they perform. Are you the kind of team that needs that kind of pressure on them to really thrive and succeed? What is like the best circumstances for you?
I mean, I know my teammates and I know myself. Personally, first, I want to win the split, so my motivation will stay the same, no matter what. Being locked in semifinals, I don't think it changes much for me. And I mean, I know my teammates. I know that we are not like this kind of team of being like lazy in a way because we're actually all on the same page. We know how far we can actually go, and we also all know what problems we have in the team. So it's like everyone is actually aware of our problems and everyone is actively trying to fix them. So hopefully for best of 5 it will change, right? But usually I would say that we're just performing better when BDS is a team that people don't expect to win, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
Like, because it's always different for like, because you have like the confidence you have when you're just so much better than everyone. It's like you can get this confidence, etc. but you can also have this confidence of like, okay, we're actually good, but they think we cannot win when actually we can. And then there's this middle ground where sometimes you don't know where to be. It's like, we're not insanely better than everyone, but we're not as bad, so people think that we'll lose, or win in a way. So it's like, you're not underdogs, but you're not the best at all. So it's like, yeah.
But I think it's hard to not treat you guys as one of the top teams.
Of course,
because it's also, I think the thing that I've been most impressed by you guys is how well you take one part that you see as a weakness on the team. And you're like, we're going to focus on this thing. We're going to drill it. We're going to fix it. And then suddenly you're really, really good at it. And it feels like over time, you've kind of gone like, hey, start of this split, we're going to work on side lane. Now we're going to work on having AP junglers so we can play for more engaged supports. And I think that's where you now have just become a massive threat. And what, like, my biggest question is kind of like, how has that process worked for you guys in creating that? Because it feels like, obviously it comes a little bit from the coaching staff, but it also feels like you guys are so good at adapting to what you feel like your team needs in those moments.
I mean, first of all, I would say like the coaching staff identifies clearly like what's our biggest weakness at the moment, and also even if everything is going great, like they also manage to identify how can we go even further, even when we feel that we're like a stable point where we don't really have a clue on how to improve, so we need to maintain the same level. But they're not in this optic. They always want to make us better, so they always find a point, even if it's like a small one. They always make us do something, like they make us learn, they make us understand concept, etc. So yeah, we're actually not lazy about that.
Yeah. What is it like? Hey, this is the one nail that we're going to hammer home, and we're going to keep going on this one thing until we get it right? Or is it more of a process of, hey, we have 3 or 4 things that we really want to work on at any given moment? Like, how do you kind of adjust to finding these improvements?
I would say usually it's like one big topic that you need to work on, but like this big topic is not like a single point. You can have like several ones. And usually like all the little points are connected to the big point, right? Basically. So even though you practice like one thing, you still, like, for example, let's say you want like to learn like a natural setup, for example, then you will not only learn that, right? You will actually learn everything that is around that. For example, manage your waves, etc., like clearing vision. So all this type of stuff. And this is basically what we're doing.
I like it overall. Looking ahead, right? KC, not the opponent that I expected you to be facing. Maybe not the opponent. I mean, is this the opponent that you expected to be facing?
I didn't expect to, yeah. I didn't expect.
So it's an interesting situation because on the one hand, if we had started playoffs, I would have assumed that you were the heavy favorites. On the other hand, they just keep winning. I think similar to you guys, they're not necessarily the most convincing wins, although they are good wins, and it's impressive from a team that was really at the bottom of our playoffs at the start. But how do you feel about this upcoming matchup? What are your thoughts on kind of what KC have been doing well, maybe where they're weak, or where you guys think you can outperform?
I mean, I would say that first of all, just KC is just better as a team. I've always said that they always had like strong individuals, but what they were lacking was actually team play. And the more you get to see them, the more you think that their team play is actually growing day by day, match after match. So, of course, I think it's going to be an interesting series. I didn't expect personally to meet them. I didn't expect them to beat SK today. But at the same time, it's my old team. So it's like, if they want to make it further for the entire year, they need to pass us. So it's a bit,
the story is juicy for sure.
We need to reach out to OTP. How do they do it in the LFL between BDS and KC,
I'm the last barrier for KC.
Yeah, they worked through Niski, the kind of the fake French guy. Now they got to go through you, the former KC player. Exactly. The story keeps going. Does it remind you at all of because you had that incredible run on Fnatic, right? Where you guys played like more games in playoffs than you did in the regular season.
That's true.
Countless best of fives. How did you feel in that run? Do you think KC's kind of in a similar situation?
Hey, I mean, I don't think so, because this is not the same right now. Yeah. I mean, KC is technically playing for the world spot, but I do think that they're more playing for like a semi-final spot. Yeah. And I mean, like the top 3, I would say.
Yeah.
Like technically we're supposed to be better than SK, right? Even though we didn't show it for the best of 3, like technically we're way better. And I think that in the LEC, the top 3 of LEC should be like Omega locked, and that no one should be allowed to enter. And we're like the only guy, It's like we're the bodyguard securing the door of the top 3 LEC.
You're the top 3 gatekeeper.
Yeah, no one is allowed here. only G2, Fnatic, and us.
It's interesting. I mean, it's crazy how many times we have these miracle run, stories in LEC. They happen so consistently. Upcoming matchup against Canna. Played a lot of Jace today. You got to play some of your picks today. I feel like I think the Gods meme stuck so well that people go back to it all the time, even when like obviously you've grown so much as a player since when you were the Darius Olaf guy at the start. But like, is there anything that you think about Canna? How do you feel about that matchup in particular? Because the Ornn looked kind of rough. The Jace looked pretty good. This is a guy that throughout most of the year, people said this guy's doing really well in scrims. We didn't always get to see it on stage. What's your take on him?
I mean, I always said that, he was individually like easily like a good player in the LEC, like a good top laner. I don't think he's like above, he's like slightly above average, but probably not good enough to be like among the best top laner in the league, like probably not top 3, for example. But he's like way above average, like he's Korean. He's Korean. He has the DNA. I don't have Korean DNA, unfortunately. But he played for T1 last year. He went towards with that one. Like he's someone, right? Like this is not like a bad player by far, and I think he's bringing like a lot of confidence for KC because, if you have a player like Canna in your team, of course you will trust him in whatever he will do, and mentally, even in an inconscient way, you will be like, my top is so good, So it's like, I think he's really positive for KC.
What's your mindset when you see like a Korean top laner coming over? Is it like oh cool, I'm going to learn from this guy? Is it like, I'm going to smash you, welcome to Europe, mate?
I've been smashing him, during the best of one. Yeah. And he went pick TF, I go Yasuo. He couldn't play, because in Korea, people don't really play like those picks. Yeah, like so top, you don't see a lot, right? Like their meta is like really strict. You only 6 Ante, Renekton, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you get the 45-55 matchups. You never get the crazy counter picks, right?
Exactly. So I'm one of the only top laner that is willing, among like probably Mirwin and BB, that are actually willing to pick like such weird champions in a way, and I don't think will have trouble against Canna. I never had typically in my career, even in scrims, and I do think that I'm a better player than him right now, and hopefully I can show it.
You mentioned top laners in the LEC. Is it as simple as just running down people at the top of the standings? Is like you, Oscar, BB? What's your take on like who the best are? Who the players that maybe you are the most excited to play against when you play against them? Because I don't want to turn this into like, here's our clickbait tier list. Start roasting people.
Me, it's always BB.
Yeah.
I think Oscar is also pretty good. He's been growing a lot, and I really like also the player he has become. Sometimes you could say that maybe he was not as good as his teammates in Fnatic, but if you check, like he stepped up so much, this guy. I really like him, and he's really like a really insane add-on for Fnatic, and he really plays a great job in Fnatic success. But I prefer flexing BB. He's more fun to play in lane, I would say. But if it's only my opinion, I think that I'm the best top laner in the league. Maybe it's my ego who tells me, but sure. I actually believe it strongly. If I don't believe it, who will for me, right?
Sure. And I'm never going to question that, right? Because I feel like if you want to be a competitor, you have to believe in yourself. And I'm always going to respect that. So you and BB, the two titans at the top. Is there anyone else you'd put up there right now?
I think Photon deserves discussion.
Poor Photon.
But yeah.
He's always in the discussion and he's never here.
I know.
Poor lad.
He is good. I like it. I think his laning phase is decent. I just think Vitality... Well, we saw what happened, so yeah.
Vitality is Vitality, unfortunately. But Photon has always been really good, even last year. It's like, I don't think he's lucky, that's all.
I feel like I think it's all Vitality that just aren't very lucky, man. That is an unlucky org. I am sorry, Vitality. This is an unlucky org. The only other thing I want to hit on before we let you go, because obviously it's late in the night, and I want to make sure you have time to, if you're going to do your reviews at midnight, want to make sure that the latest you start them is midnight. G2 Fnatic winning. What did you think about that series? Obviously a crazy 5-game series. Do you think that that's like a flash in the pan? It's a one-off? Or are Fnatic and G2 really neck and neck? Is it really close? Or do you think G2 come back like the plot armor and they start taking over again?
I think Fnatic are actually really, really good. But I think, like this series, it was like insane level, but BB was a bit trolly during the 5 games, like he had a bit of fun, let's say. And probably that's what created like the most gap between the two teams. I would say that if the 5 players of G2 perform consistently, I would say that they can easily outperform Fnatic without any doubt at this point. But BB kind of underperformed. And yeah.
How did you, Rob, I want to give you a chance and we can follow up on this later.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the meta in that series? Because that was a weird series. They like banned, like there was like 5 ADs picked, 10 ADs banned. Like, is this what you're looking forward to in the top 4? Is this normal or was this just like Fnatic and G2?
I mean, the meta is just cringe, no? Like, like what can you say? It's like you see 4 or 5 ADC per game, and it's completely normal. But like it's the meta. Like Riot decided that.
Yeah.
They decided that it was healthy for the game to have Zeri mid, Lucian mid, Tristana mid, Kai'Sa mid, Ezreal mid flex. It's like,
Man, I've seen Draven mid over the
Yeah,
LPL.
Draven
That's when you
mid,
know it's bad.
like and AP jungle as well. It's like this is the meta, right? And we could see BB even playing the Varus top into Renekton.
Yeah.
So it's like Renekton is kind of vulnerable to range. We could even see today like Jace Renekton kinda like really between hard
difficult.
irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, for a top laner like me, it's kinda, I hate it, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But I can still play range, it's okay.
It's still playing range.
Yeah.
God, this is the problem. This is the only problem about getting you on when you're about to play, right? Is we just can't. I'll have to search your solo queue and I'll have to make my own assumptions because you're the kind of guy where you play so much stuff. It's similar with BB as you highlighted, where I just want to know all the secrets.
I know there's the weird ones. I think I said on the cast today, but I'll leave it to it.
Yeah, leave it to it just
But
in case the one that you like. We don't want to like someone to be
Yeah.
like, oh, he said that one thing from solo queue and Adam gave a facial reaction and it turns
Yeah,
out to be a
exactly,
leak.
yeah.
You know, we'll drop the topic.
It's okay.
You have some spicy picks though. I'm ready. Yeah.
I should have, yeah. But at the same time, it's not that easy to play spicy picks.
Yeah.
Because like the meta on top is pretty simple. You have like Rumble feasting everyone.
Yep.
Can
That's
I-
why he's banned.
yeah, okay,
yeah,
yeah,
you're fine.
yeah,
Yeah, you're fine. You said shit sounding like 30 times. You're fine. Well, the censored thing you
So
censored.
I mean destroying everyone, and then like you have Renekton. It's like the go-to pick for top lane. You will be fine, but and in mid game, late game, you'll be completely useless. You'll just be you'll just be a bag of HP. So maybe you can sneak a stun, flash stun, and then you will be dead, right?
Yeah.
And like this is the safety, like the entrance for top laners. You just go Renekton, and besides Rumble and him, it's kind of diverse, to be honest. There's not like an insane pick that comes out of the meta. It's pretty diverse in top, I would say.
Yeah. How did you feel playing Rumble today? I was really surprised when I got through it. That game one, not to go back too far.
I mean, I was surprised. Like no one lets Rumble open.
Yeah, were you guys caught off guard? Because we looked at that
Yeah.
draft, and when you like, I was looking at that draft, and I was like, I think they're figuring this out on the fly.
Yeah.
I think they did not expect to get Rumble.
No. But I said it like it was smart because they're like trading 1 OP for 2 OPs in the meta.
Yeah.
Rumble for Tristan Sejourney. I think that was smart, but not smart enough because I think Rumble is just too overpowered. Like it probably beats Tristan and Sejourney. But for the 11-1, like we thought they would swap because they pick like a negative matchup on bot, and I'm like I have Rumble into Sion. I'm like they will swap, right?
Yeah,
So,
Sion, the best champion in a lane
yeah.
swap. Rumble, kind of terrible in a lane swap.
Exactly. So I mean, the quarter for score, I think they mind controlled us in this play, but they should for like if I knew they would not swap, for example, I think would like probably stomp them like insane because he couldn't lane.
Yeah, if
so
you're in lane at level
Yeah.
1, it's unplayable, right?
unplayable. Yeah.
Yeah. That was that overall, I'm still reeling from, that was just it was a weird day of League of Legends.
Those
Yeah.
are weird. Yeah.
So the last thing I want to talk about is we have seen so many 50-50 Barons. We have seen so many throws. Why are all of these best of threes so crazy from your perspective? Because like, obviously GX, the signature move is the 50-50 Baron. They
Yeah.
busted it out a lot. And they busted, like we saw a lot of it in your series. We saw it in the SK series. We're seeing it all over the place. Do you think it's just like teams are kind of getting shaky in the best of threes under the pressure? Is it just there's a big gap between, top 4 and bottom 4? Why are we seeing all of these really messy, kind of drawn out games?
You could say that particularly for this summer, it's like there's high stakes because you actually play the following of your year, seasonal finals, qualification to Worlds. And it's like, it's the final split, right, for some teams.
Yeah.
But for us, I don't know.
Yeah. I was gonna say you're like, I don't know, because you're Because you were supposed to be, you and SK both, frankly. Because we came into playoffs, we're like, we have a clear top 4, and then there's everybody else. And then we got into playoffs, and we're like, we have G2 Fnatic, and everybody else is...
I mean, we're still there, to be honest.
Yeah, you're still there. You've made top 4. You're still there. Unlike SK. Sorry, SK. Luckily, they locked season finals at the very least, but... I don't know. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I want to give you time to review. So thank you again, Adam, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Especially at the end of a long day. And good luck. I hope that the single day of scrims helps you find whatever the team
the
needs.
miracle, like the revelation, you know.
Yeah, the revelation.
You will see the light.
So we can just have a banging series. Obviously, finals weekend this weekend. We'll continue on with the podcast. But thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks again to Adam for coming on the show. Obviously, hung out here in the studio for quite some time, waiting to join us on the podcast. And I'm really grateful that we were able to get, 25, 30 minutes with him ahead of, it's a really tight schedule. It's a weird schedule for this finals.
Yeah.
One off day.
And that's not a weekend.
One practice day. We're recording on end of Tuesday, so Rob can get a proper weekend.
Yeah. This is, my voice is a little screwed after 16 games.
Yeah. Which we're recording this in a weird order. So he probably will have told you that at the start of the show, but this is actually the middle of the show, which is crazy because for you at home, this is the end of the show. So time, what a concept. Mm-hmm. And speaking of time, this weekend, we have a lot of banging games coming up. Look, G2, not the big boss. Wow. Force of habit, right? How many years have I said that for? Actually, Fnatic, crazy, ladies and gentlemen. The big boss, which we mentioned earlier / later, time. What a concept. G2, not the big boss. G2 waiting for the victor of KC versus BDS. A matchup I never thought I'd see. A bit of a French showdown, all things considered. Although BDS technically, I think Swiss, but they kind of started in the LFL. But and they got Adam.
It's the LFL.
They got a lot of French guys. So, close. Good enough. Close enough.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're back on a normal schedule. It's going to be big. We had Adam on, which always makes me a little bit biased. I won't lie. I'm just I'm an empathetic guy. I talk to someone, they tell me their story, and things are going to be good. The thing that I will say about Adam, and I didn't want to get into this too much, because he hadn't had time to review. I'm a little worried, Rob, about what he said, which is we're not clicking and we don't know why. Yeah. That's a red flag. Now, to be fair, I'm going to give you another example. The last person who said that to me before a finals weekend was Odo, and then it clicked for Rogue and they won everything. So, look, in the realm of possibilities, BDS...
It's not a bad...
Yeah. Most people who say that, though, to me, go on big losing streaks after they come on the podcast.
But it is strange, because it felt like everything was going so well for BDS.
Yeah, 100%.
And, we're kind of saying, their side waves look really good. It feels like they have a different identity to everyone, but definitely identity. When you look at, we're going to go for something that can hard push bot, even going for things like the Jinx, where even if we need to lane swap, go for it to get past weak early games. But 5 minutes, we are rotating top to hit the 6-minute void grubs. We are then rotating again at 11 minutes to get again. They felt like they had a very clear way they wanted to play the game. And then they're using the push from AD carry to take side lane towers and blow open the game and just get these absorbent gold leads. But that's just not there. And then it feels like because even he was kind of saying the problems that we're having is when we get to, objective setups later on, but it nearly feels like they've lost that magic in the early game as well, which is kind of where you expect more of the set plays to come into.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't really know what's happening with BDS. They just feel kind of lost.
Yeah.
And I really am hoping that they do find it, because they've been the team that I've really looked forward to watching every week, because it does feel like they are slowly improving every single time they take to the main stage. So to see it kind of fall apart at the last second when you're getting to playoffs and you're starting to hit the season finals, it's kind of heartbreaking for what has been actually a very good year to see their improvement. I was only thinking yesterday, Nuke just feels like top 3 mid laner, maybe even top 2, because Humanoid had that slump in the middle. So from a performance base, just this split, not looking historically or anything like that, Nuke has been consistently one of the best mid laners we have. He solo killed Humanoid, he's been monstrous. And now you're kind of looking at these games going, well, it's hard to kind of have that conversation now when BDS are on such a slump.
Starting to get murky. You're right. And I think that especially with KC on the rise, and the interesting thing about this is G2 and Fnatic, when Nuke talked about it, he talked about the clear top 3. Right now, I think it's a clear top 2. If BDS get in form, I'll give them the clear top 3. But I just don't know if we're there right now. I think that would have been fair. And I would have said top 4 coming into playoffs with SK. It felt like that was cut and done. And then SK looked shaky, and I was like, maybe not. BDS looked shaky once, I'll give them once. BDS looked shaky twice. All right, buddy, it's like a top 2, and then now we're going to have a conversation. So I'm not sure how either of these teams match up if they get further. But KC just continues to be the big surprise to me because obviously we didn't do coverage on the previous week. But this is a team that I we have had very low expectations from. I have had very low expectations from. And the one player that I really want to shout out here, because while the entire team has stepped up, I talked a lot at the start of the season about Vladdy and how I was kind of skeptical. Because, look, he has great moments in ERL. I didn't think it was going to mean too much. And the thing that I saw very clearly in their content was that he's clearly like a great personality. And if you missed the PGL that he was on most recently, please check it out. He's a really funny guy, goofball.
Yeah.
But he's been fantastic individually. And I think that Upset rising back up, that's a peak we've seen before. Closure coming together, that's a peak. Canna, that's a peak we've seen before. Targamas has hit high highs. Vladdy, seeing those high highs in the clutch, when the pressure in theory is as high as it's going to get, I think is really impressive. And I got to give that credit to KC. Now, I don't know when the fairy tale comes to an end, because both of these teams, man, they're winning games, they're losing games they maybe shouldn't, they're winning games they maybe shouldn't. Like, these are two teams that are so hard to nail down.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, to go back to your Vladdy point, I think the thing that's really impressed me with Vladdy is his ability to be clutch on champions like the Azir. Because I think when you come into the LEC for the first time, you'll see it a lot with rookies, is that they don't really take that
they're so scared.
shining step forward.
Yeah, they're not going to flip it.
Especially for an organization like KC, where there is a ton of fandom, there is a lot of pressure on you to perform in that sort of situation. So credit to what I'm assuming is the coaching staff for setting up a great environment for Vladdy coming in, and it's the team as well for that.
Yeah.
But Vladdy as well to then step up, earlier on today, the Azir shuffle that he had, basically won that game for them.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it's been really impressive, because when he first arrived, I was kind of similar to yourself, where I looked at a couple of where he positioned himself in fights, or he had to Talia wall to get to the opposite side of Dragon Pick because he hadn't really set himself up correctly. I was like, okay, he's going to take a little bit of time to get going. But he just feels week 4 or 5, now coming into week 6, he's just found his strength and his confidence. And I think because of that, you're then having a major step up across the team, because once your mid lane is a bit more solidified, Closer looks significantly better now. He feels like he's found his identity on these kind of tank engaged junglers where he can have an early impact, get the ball rolling. And then Upset's just been beautiful, man. It is so fun to watch him on the Kais and the Ezreal. Those team fights where he's just sending himself into the middle. The last second Zonya's Hourglass and the enemy base on Kais, I was like, oh, this is so sick. That's what I want to see from my AD carries.
Yeah, it's good too, because I think that while I understand how the incredible passion of KC fans evokes this response from the KC haters, and they kind of the universe balances itself out. Obviously, Upset's a guy who gets caught in the crossfire a lot and has been I'm not going to say that he's without fault. He was on a lot of bad teams and he was a part of that bad team. I wasn't there. I don't know how much of that fault it is, but he's a guy that's come under a lot of scrutiny, come under a lot of criticism. And even if he's called out casters too. I'm not going to hold any bad blood there. I'm just happy to see a guy who I know has a high ceiling finally able to perform and show that again on stage. That is always so cool to watch.
Yeah.
That said, as exciting as KC is, as much as the good games look really good, Rob, this series is a mess. Every other series, I feel a lot more confident about predicting. This series, I think so much comes down to what happens to BDS these next few days, because the momentum very clearly in KC's favor, I think. And I think that still most people will be predicting, BDS as the favorites, probably just based on, maybe not anymore. Maybe they've really shifted perception. I still think that KC would be the perceived underdogs, but it is getting harder and harder to tell.
I think the biggest problem for BDS is kind of where Adam hit on with not really understanding what their identity is anymore and I agree with it from a draft perspective, because I think the big boon that BDS had coming in was that they are willing to pick shale things like we got the Karthus, but specifically the Talia jungle and that kind of stuff. Talia jungle isn't as popular now, and it feels like you need to move over towards the Zyras and the brands, and they haven't really found that.
Yeah, but the no brand today, I just got a quick aside. The no brand today was very upsetting.
Yeah, and I think
Talia was just objectively nerfed.
But I think that's also the glaring point of, this is where your draft slips apart. And then if you've been practicing all these AP junglers coming in and you've been practicing these carry junglers, well, that's why we're seeing Shale fall back to Viego, because it's our identity has been, we go for Rel, we get the engages with Labrov, he's our go guy, and then we have the follow-up from these Talias and now Viego essentially to do that. But without finding that success on the Viego, because I don't think Viego works in this meta, and then looking towards things you're not bringing out the brand, you're not bringing out the Zyra, it feels like BDS are just struggling to find how they want to approach a draft in the same way because there's not those clear-cut picks. So my biggest thing I want to actually see is if they come into this and they are comfortable in things like the brand and the Zyra, because we already saw Sheo play Zyra, but it's like, I think that's where I could see then BDS being way more comfortable in that scenario. But it's also then kind of slightly different style as well, because it's not like when you have a Talia, it's Labrov goes, Sheo follows. And it's kind of an inverse of what BDS were doing last year, where it was Sheo goes, Labrov follows, but you still had that 1-2 combo. If you're going for something like a brand, you're kind of more of a damage dealer playing back rather than being the secondary and follow-up.
I mean, it's also interesting because I think that like KC are a Sejuani team, right? Like through and through.
Yeah.
They're not going to play the AP junglers. It's just not going to be their priority. It doesn't really fit into the identity they've established thus far. And they are very much of a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of team. And at this point, if they were anything else, I'd be actually very confused as to why they're trying to like revolutionize their play style.
But that's the thing, right? I think it's like this will carry them. The question is, will it carry them to the top 3? Because it won't break them into finals. But like when you look at like both Fnatic and G2 being able to smurf in this meta, it's a case of can it get you to the season finals? Then you can maybe look at changing it.
Sure. And I think the big thing is, I think breaking into top 2 is a much harder topic, because I think that the depth of champion pools and the variety of styles that can be played by our top 2, Fnatic and G2, is just higher than both these teams right now. And again, during the regular season, I would have given BDS that benefit of the doubt. Right now, it is very shaky. And for KC, like they could show up and play it like crazy Nidalee Renekton game, and it would rock my world. I would be very, very surprised. But until then, I like what they're doing. I wouldn't advise them to change it, because I think top 3 has to be the goal. I think anything else, like one step at a time, boys. Like let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I do think that it makes that much more important in a world where you're not going to guarantee side selection every game. Where if you're not banning Sedge, like you're probably first picking it if you're on either side, just because you know how important it is. But in the games where you need to be able to leverage the full power of the meta jungle champions, which I don't think is Talia, dude. She just doesn't. I think Talia sucks right now. I think that right now there is to me, she doesn't really do what I want from an engaged jungler. She's not hitting hard enough to be the AP jungler either. Yeah. Because even Zyra sometimes isn't hitting hard enough. But we have seen so many games this past weekend where Brand is just insanely powerful.
It's the fact that like both Brand and Zyra need nothing except put them in their place, like CC them for a split second and they're dead. There is like a Brand will one shot you, a Zyra will one shot you, Talia kind of needs the help, the backup. She will get you to like a quarter HP, but kind of needs someone else to finish that.
Yeah, and like the early game setup is better and the wall is nice, but I just think that that's not really, it's not enough to balance out for me, because also Rylai's is a disgusting item, and Brand and Zyra are probably the 2 best champions of the game to use that item, at least in the current meta. It is so good. Yeah. It is so hard to play fights against a Brand or a Zyra with Rylai's.
It's also, they're just really good anti-dive. Yeah. And like Talia kind of fits into that, but definitely Brand, and like if you dive in a Brand and Zyra, you know about it very quickly, because suddenly all of your team's
one minefield from Talia is not enough to ruin a team fight. She doesn't have a real ulti, and if you get dived on, right? If you're initiating your proc and you get a lead, Talia can be the wall is it's a game changing ability. But if Zyra just mashes her face into QWER as she gets engaged on player, just whap into the keyboard, you're probably winning that fight, or you're at least you have contributed enough to justify that pick.
But it's even the fact that like I think it was Humanoid yesterday, they were playing as the Brand, and he like went forward in a team fight and just half his HP was gone, and it was just nothing hit, like all that happened was the Brand. I think it was the Zyra, but basically one of the ults hit him and he was just half HP immediately, and he was like, well, now I've got to play super safe in this fight because I can't really go for it. And then we actually end up rewinding the fight. I think he walked over like 2 Jhin bombs. And he just
that fight.
And then his HP is just a sliver. And I was like, you didn't get to play this, did you?
Mid lane fight, Fnatic versus G2. Rob, we cast that. I don't remember what game it was.
He was on his ear.
He just watched that fight. He gets hit by Caps' Ezreal ult, and then he just is into Jhin traps and isn't aware of how much damage that's going to do, because you just walk out of them, right? It's a Jhin trap. Who thinks about Jhin traps except for Jhin players? Nobody. And then he almost dies.
It's game 3 with Azir and no on the Caitlyn.
Yeah.
There's that one. Yeah, it was so dumb. It was just like, how did he die?
Goofy. That one was more about Jin, the AP champions in the end. That was actually just Ezreal and Jin. So that was a complete aside, but still good. Yeah, so I'm worried for BDS, but I do think that this is going to be such an incredible series.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to be scrappy and messy? Yeah. It's not going to hit the like clean, perfect series, but it's an incredibly intense series. The stakes are super high. KC are literally one step away from completing the miracle run, from making a dream a reality, and a dream that is so incredibly improbable. Every single team they have faced to make it here was like above. I would have ranked above them, but even in the regular season, man.
Summer kind of feels like the time for it to happen, because if you look at this time last year, it was Excel making that miracle run where they took G2 to all 5 games in round 1, and then people were kind of like, wait, what the hell? That's got to be a fluke. And then they just took their games, got all the way to final. Now, it wasn't 3-0 in the final, but it was like, where the hell was this Excel? Like, they just, everything seemed to click, so you just happens sometimes. Yeah,
and again, I was, when we talked about this, I said KC were the team I believed in the least because I hadn't seen their ceiling, and I knew what the ceiling of MDK looked like. I knew what the ceiling of Team Heretics looks like. I knew how good I had more faith in GX, and you know, I had all my points. I really thought I was clever, but turns out the ceiling I couldn't see was the most impressive of them all.
But I don't think we have seen it, is the thing.
They keep getting better.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
I hate this anime protagonist shit because I keep bringing it up, but we keep living in these anime protagonist ass timelines, dude.
Yeah, every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel like we've seen the end of it. They have these moments where they can just completely take over a game and there's nothing you can do about it. Like we saw it against them, MDK was just a game where it's like, no, you don't get to play. We just win now. And like, even there's been games where they kind of fight back from these massive deficits and you're like, okay, so how do you just kill Karmine Corp? And it feels very difficult to find what that one thing is. Now, maybe it is trying to focus on, lack of AP junglers or something, but there's so many options here between like Vi, Mecha, Sejuani, everything else. It's so hard.
I mean, I feel like SK were very close to figuring out the formula. I think getting upset off comfort, getting a winning bot lane matchup, and then if you're just a bit more of a consistent team than SK was today, like, I think BDS are going to struggle. I think this is a hard fight for BDS. I do think that the top 2 is very different. So I want to move on. BDS KC, we'll see who wins that matchup. Winner is going to face against G2. Winner is going to face against the final boss of our gauntlet. That's Fnatic. That's our big Sunday final. I'm still expecting a Fnatic G2 final because I think that as much as like the KC have been able to find so many angles to win, I think overall their game plan is still relatively simple. It's still a lot of like these kind of more front to back team comps, or at least like reliable engaged Targamas, jungle support and then carry threats. I think the cool thing obviously is Canna on the Jace, and I think Vladdy and Upset are doing really well as a duo, as a carry duo, right? They're doing fantastic. But when it comes to a team that will, like G2, like we saw in game 1 against Fnatic, that will just penta ban 80 carries, pick 380 carries, and just shake things up. Yeah. I think that's going to be so hard. Like that is going to require a level from KC that we have not seen yet. And they've shown us a lot of levels that we haven't seen. Every day I feel like we're seeing a new level from KC. Even though, yes, a lot of these series are sloppy, they keep winning. But Fnatic and G2 are just a task that is too tall for any other team right now. BDS and KC, I think this is where the dream dies. One of you is getting top 3, and this is where it ends. It's Fnatic G2, not because of plot armor, not because of the narrative, but just because these 2 teams right now are a cut above.
I do agree with you, but I think there is a very big talking point on G2, which is BrokenBlade's performance in playoffs.
Sure.
And I've been touting BB as like the top laner of the entire split.
BrokenBlade's best year in his career ever, individually.
Hands down, no doubt.
But this is not his best playoffs.
No, and I think the Jace performances have not been good. Like, now, I was kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt against BDS because, they lane swapped into him. Labrov tried to go for the dive under tower, ended up dying. Like, they were throwing everything to try and get down BB, and then Adam comes in the Malphite and beats him, right? But it's starting to become a little bit more regular, where he's now losing out on the Jace again in another series, and it's not looking so hot, and it's starting to become a point of pressure, and Fnatic were able to exploit it. And especially when BB for me, it was kind of like, BB and Caps were holding down the G2 fort after MSI. Yeah. BB was still looking absolutely insane, and I was still like, look, whatever happens, you can still rely on this man. This guy looks untouchable.
The Camille game where the entire rest of the map was friggin' disaster. He finally gets 2 items, he just kills everybody, right?
Exactly. And it's just like, to see that now completely disappear is an issue. And like, yes, you can see him picking out like new things and trying new stuff, but it's like if you're not able to just win lane with these picks, and that's the whole point of kind of what you're going for in top lane, it falls apart because they're taking compositions that are AP jungle, we're no tank top, we're no tank mid, and we have one tank, which is Mickey X in that bot lane, and he's not going to be able to help you.
Yeah, and
So if
even
you
when
lose,
they do
it's
have
gone.
anything else, it's Yike. And like, sorry, not Yike, it's Maokai. It's
Yeah.
always Yike, obviously. In the
An AP
jungle.
Maokai.
Yeah, and it's AP Maokai, and it's just like that. AP Maokai does a lot of things really well, but he is not that second engage source. He is at best half of an engage source, and obviously like counter engage, whatever. But like G2 are not only like it's not only that BrokenBlade is setting himself up with a difficult job where it really demands a certain level of performance. Like all of G2 are kind of doing that. And like don't get me wrong, they can always simplify. I think they're a team that probably will continue to push themselves in draft, but it's like I don't think they're going to stop.
No.
And this is a team that because they want to go for these really bold, really aggressive drafts with the crazy Varus tops, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, they are our most like LPL drafting team.
Sure.
Like when you look at that, that is a draft that I'd expect to see in the LPL. And I think that's why we're seeing them go for this so consistently, is that they want to be able to compete on that international stage. If this is what the meta is coming in towards our season finals and worlds, but then you have to be able to play it. But it does require a mega high level of execution because you are playing a composition that requires you to win every single lane so that then you can take every single outer turret and you are going to play off wave states and use those advantages and you are going to play a very clean macro game. But when you start to slip behind because BB's getting caught out with the rotation of their bot lane, or if BB's just not able to individually survive the 1v1 or there's a gank that goes top, that's where it starts to fall apart. And that's where I start to get worried, is that G2 are trying to take on this mantle. But now, I don't think I think they will eventually be able to get better at it. But it's a case of, will you get better for the summer? I don't know. And that's where I think the big question mark is. And then it becomes, do G2 continue this style to try and get better for Worlds, or do you try and band-aid it for summer, the next two series essentially, try and win summer, and then come back at it in season finals?
Yeah, and a question we're going to have to keep evaluating. I think last hits on Fnatic here. I think great series overall.
Yeah,
Razork.
Beast.
Monster. Absolutely monster. I think that Fnatic are, Adam kind of highlighted already, I think G2 are still on average favorites when they face. I think it does still require big performances. I have concerns about Fnatic. I don't think it was perfect. They got there in a long series. I think, they outplayed in a lot of instances. It was a great series. I am worried about kind of the example case of game one. I worry about Humanoid's champion pool, and I worry about Noah's champion pool specifically. And I'm curious as to what that's going to look like. In what I expect to be a rematch, I did not like the Jhin. There are some good Jhin moments, certainly across the series. I didn't think the Caitlyn was great in the series, even though Fnatic won that game. I think Caitlyn looked mediocre as hell in that series. Hansam with the lead, Noah with the lead, didn't do much, right? Like ultimately, yes, in a couple fights, great, but there's so many points in that series where that champion just kind of stood around. And that concerns me, because I think when Fnatic are really at their best, really firing on all cylinders, Noah's that guy that'll just carry every single fight. And I don't think we saw that on Jhin. And of course, you're not going to see it on a Jhin. And we didn't see it on a Caitlyn either. And I think you can see it on a Caitlyn. It's not as airy. It's not a Jinx. It's not as simple as you just win fights, right? If you're good. There's a little more nuance there. But those are kind of things I'm worried about. Is there anything that's like you're thinking about when it comes to Fnatic and finals? Anything you want to highlight before we kind of close out?
So I think there's like a couple of different things. So for one, hitting on the Razork point, this series for me was a huge amount about jungle diff. And it's not saying that Yike underperformed. It was that Razork was just that guy that day, where he was consistently finding these great engages on the Sejuani. Even he said in the interview to turn around and just be like, my coach told me to pick Sejuani. I was like,
game 5.
No, I'm Nidalee. I was like, you legend. I was like, all right, fair enough. You knew that you could carry this game. You carried this game. So he managed to pull it off. But I think I think that was the confidence I want to see for Razork, because for me, I do look at Razork as trying to be, if not the best jungler in Europe. So when you were able to put on a performance like that with Nidalee, it fills me with a lot of hope to see what he can do, because inevitably, like, it feels like Fnatic will be one of the teams representing us at Worlds. So giving that confidence to have a Nidalee performance like that is great. The other thing that I want to kind of hit on for like the meta bit that you were talking about with the Jhin is I understand where teams are coming from with this. What you oftentimes see is when you only have that one engage support, it can be really difficult to find the fights that you want.
Yeah.
Especially because you're trying to go for so many of these carry top laners as well. Like even we got the TFs, the Jaces, everything that's in between that's coming through. So and even the Kennans now, it kind of need that utility AD carry to step back in. And I think that's where Ashe slots in really nicely. And what G2 have identified is she does the damage, but she also acts as that primary or even secondary engage tool to set up your fight. So it's not just heavily reliant on, especially if a Varel or something whose engage range can be relatively short without flash. You've got that engage, right?
Relatively.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's late.
But I think that's why it's super interesting to see how both Fnatic and G2 have kind of recognized this pain point. Because one of the things I noticed a lot when watching LPL drafts versus LEC drafts is how much more willing they are to take a utility style AD carry to support that. And that could even be what we don't have, like a Senna Ornn because in the bot lane, because then your engage is better, but you're still going for the carries elsewhere, right? But you still get the Ornn engage. And it's those kind of things that I think both Fnatic and G2 do well. So I can understand why they're going for the Jhin, but it does then hamstring you because the way Fnatic play with Noah is for him to be that late game insurance. They will leave him boss. They will play for Void Grubs, sans Noah, because they want Noah to farm by himself. They want him to get those solo levels. And then when they get to the 23, 25 minute team fight, that's where Noah's going to pop off and use all those resources that he's gained by himself. But that doesn't work on a Jhin, and it doesn't really work on the Caitlyn as well when you're not really winning out in the same way that you were. So I think that's where Noah struggled. And then obviously getting cut out several times was just suboptimal.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, individually, that was a sloppy freaking series from Noah. And like they won in the end, so I'm glad. I'd feel really bad if we had to like be like, look, we need to talk about Noah if they were in the losers bracket, but we would, and we do. I mean, like, he got caught in that bot side river brush like 3 times that series. And he's like, all 3 of those deaths could have lost the game. One time he had a GA, one time they were so far ahead that they managed to turn it, one time it was just bad, right? But like, it was a little bit loose. And those are the kind of mistakes that series overall was really chaotic. And both teams were clearly like, I feel like lost a little bit in the bloodlust multiple times. And we as we mentioned earlier / will mention later, loved casting that series. But I think that's the big thing I'm looking at too, because I do think that while Jhin can be good, it wasn't super convincing, right? And I think that for the most part, Hans and Mickey kind of had their number. The Misfortune pick is looking very good right now if it gets a setup in terms of a decent matchup. And, has decent utility. Really people underestimate how good the make it rain slow is when combined with the MF movement speed. It's great. It's why she was good at support, right? And part of the reason why I had to get nerfed. Nerfed in 2017.
But I wouldn't be surprised if you see something like Senna Ornn coming out instead of the Jhin, because I feel like that's kind of the same idea. That
would be a new spin, and that would really mix things up. And that's the kind of creativity I would love to see in our final. Again, final congrats to Fnatic for making it this far. While I'm a little skeptical, I am still incredibly excited for this rematch. The most excited I've been for a series this entire year, because I didn't know to be excited for this first time. I was like, wow, G2 3-0, maybe, probably. But this one, I'm jazzed for. It's not guaranteed, however. We're going to kick things off with BDS versus K-Corp. Winner will then face G2. Winner will then face Fnatic in the summer finals. Reminder, winner of our split is guaranteed a world slot. Obviously, third is the lowest one that you can get, and then if you place higher than that in the season finals, you get second or first. But that is pretty fantastic to guarantee this early on, before some regions are even starting their playoffs. That is a really big confidence booster. So it's going to be a big weekend coming up. This has been EUphoria, episode 17. Sorry, we missed you last week. Sickness, inconveniently timed. Shout out again for Adam for joining us on the show, and we will see you this Friday. BDS KC, absolute banger, best of 5. KC win. They are top 3. They lock season finals. 10th season finals. Crazy.
That's insane.
Absolutely insane. Do not miss it. If there was ever a week of LEC to tune in for, this is it. I don't think I say that every time, but I really especially mean it this time.
Week is insane.
This is a great week.
So good.
This is a great week. This is 3 hopefully stellar best of 5s. At least 2 finals, and the first match guaranteed. The middle match, but the first match, the last match, good. Tune in. We'll see you guys there.